Morning students. In the last class we saw about active and passive voice. We started with active and passive voice. I gave you introduction. I gave you basic things you have to remember when you have to change from active to passive. All that we discussed in the last class. Before we start this class, if you want, you can again go through that video. Today I am going to directly start with transformation from active to passive. Okay. So now I told you in the last class that only 8 tenses out of the 12 tenses in English can be passivized. Remaining 4 do not have passive form. Clear? So first I am going to start with, see last class itself I started present tense, but still I will start with revision because present tense, still in the present tense we have to transform positive to negative. Negative sentences we have to change them into passive voice, then interrogative sentences we have to change them into passive voice. So again I'll just revise present tense, then we will see the remaining. Okay. So simple present, in the last class we discussed only about assertive sentence. Assertive sentence, the two only positive. Okay. So how did I, so first I'll write the sentence. Okay. So now this sentence, the professor teaches English, this sentence is in active voice. Okay. So this sentence is in active voice. Now to change the sentence into passive voice, if you remember, I told you last time, first you have to pattern the given sentence into subject, verb and object. So who is doing the action in this sentence? What is the action actually in this sentence? Teaching is the action. So we name any action word as verb. Okay. So who is teaching? Okay. Or who is doing the work of teaching? This noun, the professor is teaching. So we can name the professor as subject. And what is the professor actually teaching? The professor is teaching English. So work is done to this noun. So we name this noun as object. Now once you have patterned it, the second step you have to do is just interchange them. You just bring object to the front, English, then you take subject to the last by the professor, and before this you have to add the preposition by. I have already done it. Then the remaining part is only the verb. So now this, as we have already named it, it is there in simple present tense. How will you find out the tense of this verb? It is ending with yes or es. Okay. Actually the base form of this verb is only teach. Now we have added this yes or es to show that the given sentence or the verb is in simple present tense form. So simple present tense form, it will be either teach or teaches for this verb in active voice. Now what is the passive form of this verb? What are the 3 possible passive forms? Am taught. Okay. So auxiliary verb plus past participle of the verb, or is taught, or are taught. Okay. So am, it is used only with I, is used with singular, and are is used with plural. Now if you see in this answer, the subject, whether this is first person singular, no, this is singular subject. This is not first person singular, but this is a singular noun. So for singular noun you are supposed to use only is. So what is the V3 form, that is past participle form of teach? It is taught. Okay. So now this is how you have to write the answer. So English is taught by the professor. So active voice, and we have got the passive form by interchanging subject and verb and writing the corresponding verb form in its passive form. Okay. So this is past participle and this is auxiliary verb for this subject because this is a singular subject. Okay, so now this is with the positive sentence. This we saw in the last class itself. Okay, now what about negative sentence? Okay, I'll give you example for negative sentence. He lights a candle. So this will be usually the sentence in the positive form. Now what is the negative form of this sentence? See, now present tense, simple present tense, they don't usually have auxiliary verb. How will you change a positive sentence into negative sentence? You have to just add the negative word not next to the auxiliary verb. But when it comes to simple present tenses in active voice, they don't have auxiliary verb. So just because they don't have auxiliary verb, we have to use do verb. What are the three do verbs? Do, does and did. Just because we are talking about simple present tense, you have to deal only with do or does. Do is for plural and does is for singular. Clear? And do is also used for I or you. Okay, so now if you see this subject is singular subject, singular pronoun. So which do verb you have to use for present tense? Does you have to use. So does plus light. Okay, so this light becomes does plus light. So now this is the auxiliary verb now. So after this does you can add not. He does not light a candle. Now this you have to change it into passive voice. Okay, so again you just pattern it. He, this is verb. What is the action? Lighting is the action. Who is lighting? He is lighting. So this is subject, this is verb. And what is he lighting? He is lighting a candle. Same thing. A candle. See, though in the question you have auxiliary verb does, but when you change it into passive voice, you can only use either am, is or are. You should not use do verbs again. You have to only use any one of these three be verbs when you are passivizing the negative simple present tense. Okay, so a candle, you have brought the candle to the front. When he goes to the object position, it becomes him. Okay, now before this you have to add the preposition by. Now this verb, how will you change? See, this does plus light, it shows that it is simple present tense. Again, on any one of these three only you have to use, I told, no? So what is the subject here? Again the subject here is also singular. So for singular, what is the auxiliary verb? This is the auxiliary verb. A candle is, this not negative word, you bring it as it is. Is not lit by him. Okay, see, for example, he lights a candle. This is positive sentence. So if you had changed this positive sentence into passive voice, what will be the answer? A candle is lit by him would have been the answer. But just because you have got does not, you are only adding this extra word negative here. A candle is not lit by him. This is how you have to change a given negative sentence into its passive form. Okay, so as soon as you see does or do in a negative sentence, you can understand that it is simple present tense. And obviously in your passive voice, you have to use any one of these three auxiliary verbs. Okay, so now we have discussed positive sentence, negative sentence. Now for simple present, we have one more category that is called as interrogatives. What do you mean by interrogatives? Interrogatives are nothing but questions. Okay, so interrogatives are nothing but questions. When we talk about questions, we have two kinds of questions. Okay, WH questions and SR no questions. See, now the same sentence you can use it for questions also. Okay, the professor teaches English. Okay, so now how will you change this into WH question? Who teaches English? Or what does the professor teach. Okay, so this is WH question. Now the same thing you can change it into yes or no question also. Okay, see, the professor teaches English. So I told instead of auxiliary verb for simple present tense you have to use do verb. Okay, so now here again the professor teaches. Teaches is simple present tense. So the only two possible do verbs you can use is do or does. Now for professor you can use does. Okay, so how will you change it into yes or no question? Does the professor teach? You should not write it as teaches. Teach English. Is it clear? Okay. Now this active voice we have to change it into passive form. Now who teaches English? Now just because you have already written see, for this question you have already changed that in the sentence form, assertive form, you have changed it into passive voice. Now doing the same sentence will be easy. Okay, see now, who teaches English? How can this be changed into passive voice? For example, instead of this who, we can have the same noun professor itself. So if you have the same noun professor itself instead of this who, what is the passive voice for that? English is taught by the professor. See now, instead of this word only, see, in the place of who only we have replaced this word. So automatically in this place, what is the word that is supposed to come? Who. Okay, but since this is in the object position, you have to write it as whom. Clear? And see, before you learn the conversion from active voice to passive voice, if you properly talk about questions, I want you to learn about the structure of questions. Okay, see, first we are dealing with WH questions. So WH questions, they usually start with WH word. Then you have auxiliary verb. Then you have subject. Then you have main verb. And if there is any remaining part of the sentence, the rest you will have in the end. Is it clear? Okay. So now, see, this is the passive form we have got. Who teaches English? We are changing this question into the professor teaches English. Clear? And for this sentence, we have already written the answer as English is taught by the professor. Okay. But if you see, the structure is in the form of a sentence. Now this structure, you have to change it into the structure of a question sentence. So now, what is the WH word here? By whom? By whom? Then, after the question word, what should you use? Auxiliary verb. What is the auxiliary verb here? This is the auxiliary verb. Okay. Now, after auxiliary verb, what is the thing you have to use here? Subject. What is the subject here in this one? English is the subject here. So, by whom is English. Now, after English, what is the thing you have? Main verb. What is the main verb here? Taught is the main verb. Okay, so now after that finally, you have to put the question mark. Okay, see, for this sentence, we have written the corresponding passive voice. This word professor was used as an extra word in order to derive this answer. Is it clear? Because in the beginning you may find it difficult to directly change an interrogative sentence from active to passive. See, who teaches English? By whom is English taught? See, because this is the subject, this is the verb and this is the object. Clear? So, this English you have to take it in the front and this who you have to take it into the subject position. When this who you take to the subject position, it becomes whom. Is it clear? Now, before this who you have to add the word preposition by. Okay, so English is taught by whom. That is the passive form you will get. But just because this is an interrogative sentence, you have to restructure it in the form of a question. So what is the structure of a WH word? first it should, what is the structure of a WH question? It should first begin with WH word. So this by whom, we will bring it to the front, then auxiliary verb, then subject. So by whom alone we have brought it here. See, actually we got it as, see, who teaches English? English is taught by who. This is how we got. But this who, no, it is there in the object position. So we should not write it as who. It becomes whom when it comes to the object position. Now, if you see the structure, first it is beginning with WH word. So bring this WH word. You cannot simply write whom here, by whom. Okay, whenever you have an active sentence beginning with who, automatically the passive voice you should begin with by whom only. Okay, by whom. See, next one is auxiliary verb. So you just write this auxiliary verb. Then subject. English is the subject here. By whom is English. Then you have the main verb taught. Is it clear? So this is how you have to change a WH question into its passive voice. Okay. Okay. Okay, now this for the same sentence, you can have another kind of WH question. Okay, we will deal with that also. Okay. One more example. What does the professor teach? Okay. Is it clear? The professor teaches English. That is the sentence actually. Now for that sentence, we have written this WH question. So if you see this question, the answer for this question actually is the object of this sentence. So this is actually the object of the sentence. This is actually subject and this is the verb. Okay. So you just, as usual, you just change it into passive voice. This subject, it goes to the last, right? So, by the professor. This teach, it becomes again, is taught. Because past participle of teach is taught. Okay, what alone is left out? What does. Now, when you change this into passive voice, now for this does only we have already written is. Okay, for this auxiliary verb only in passive voice we have written it as is. So when this is changed into its passive voice, this is how you have to write it. What does the professor teach? It becomes what is taught by the professor, because this what does, it is the answer, whatever you get as an answer for this what does, it has to be in the object position. So we take this as an object. So the remaining thing when you pattern it, this is subject and this is verb. Okay, so the subject you are taking it to the last and this verb you are passivizing it as is taught. Is it clear? Then this is remaining, so this what you are bringing it down as it is, and finally you have to put a question mark. Is it clear? So this is for WH question. Okay, then we will deal with yes or no question. Now the same sentence, the professor teaches English. Now what is the yes or no question for this sentence? Does the professor teach English? Now if you see in this yes or no question, you have all the parts like subject, verb and object. Subject is there, verb is there and object is there, but you have got this extra auxiliary verb does to show that it is a question, and that too particularly yes or no question. Is it clear? So now you have to passivize this into, you have to change this into passive form. So now the subject you take to the last, the professor, And since this is in the form of a question, answer should also be a question only. So don't forget to put this question mark. Now before this subject we will always add by, no? We have done that also. Now this English, you write it in the front. Is it clear? Now what is remaining? This does plus teaches alone remaining. This does plus teach becomes teaches. Clear? This does and teach, it becomes teaches. So what is the passive form of teaches? Am taught, is taught, are taught. Okay, so now again for English it is taught only. Okay, so you will write is taught. So now main verb you have written here, but where is the auxiliary verb? What is the position of the auxiliary verb in yes or no question? It is in the front. So this is how we have to write the answer for yes or no question. Does the professor teach English? You just as usual you pattern it. Subject, verb, object, and you have got this auxiliary verb to show that it is a question, yes or no question. And as soon as you see does, we can understand the tense of the sentence. It is simple present tense. Okay. Now as usual you interchange the subject and the object. You take the subject to the last, you bring the object to the front. Okay. And before this you add this preposition by. Now as usual the final part is the verb. Verb means if there is auxiliary verb that will also be included. So what is the verb that is left out? Does plus teach. So does plus teach becomes teaches. This is active voice. What is the passive form of teaches? I told you 3 possible passive forms. Am taught, is taught, are taught. But here the subject is again English. So it is only is taught. Okay. So now in the place of teach you write taught. In the place of does, that is auxiliary verb, you write the auxiliary verb is. And this is the final answer. Is English taught by the professor? Is it clear? This I want you all to please understand and remember it. Because first of all, see if you understand, if you remember this structure, no? I have already given that structure, but I will just write it again. Please note down the structure. WH question, it starts with WH word. Following that you will have auxiliary verb. Following the auxiliary verb you will have subject. Then you have the main verb. Then in case if there is anything else like complement adjunct, you will have it after main verb. But this is the base structure of a WH question. Now what about yes or no question? Now the only difference is in yes or no question you will not have this WH word. If you see yes or no question, it directly starts with auxiliary verb. So this part alone you have to omit. Then you have auxiliary verb plus subject plus main verb. Clear? And if there is object, you will have it after this main verb. See, does the professor teach English? Auxiliary verb, subject, main verb, then object. If you see the answer also, auxiliary verb, subject, main verb, then the object. So this is the structure of WH question and yes or no question. If you remember this and if you follow these things, it will be very easy for you to change from active to passive voice. So for simple present tense, I have taught you how to change a positive sentence into passive voice, negative sentence into passive voice, then WH question into its passive form and yes or no question into its passive form. So with this we will move to the next tense, that is simple past tense. So now we will see for present continuous tense. See, present continuous tense in the last class itself I told you it will have ing form to show that it is continuous tense, and auxiliary verbs you will have any one of these 3 auxiliary verbs. Am, is, are. Am eating, is eating, are eating. Okay. So now as usual you just pattern the given sentence into subject, verb and object. What is action that is being done? Eating is action. Who is eating? She is eating. And what is she eating? She is eating fruits. Okay. Now this is a positive sentence because you don't have any negative word here. This is a positive sentence and you don't have negative meaning also. Okay. Now you change this into a passive voice. Fruits, you bring it to the front. See children, you have to be careful in sentences like these because in this sentence the subject is singular, object is plural. Okay, so when you change it into passive form, you have to be very careful. So this fruits, you have brought it to the front, and she, if you take it into the object position, it becomes her. Now before this you add by. Okay, now the remaining part is verb as usual. Okay, so now is eating is active form. What are the three possible passive form for this? Am being eaten, is being eaten, are being eaten. I told you in the previous class, being should be used if it is a continuous tense. So for sure you can write this being. Now for eating, what is the past participle form? Eaten. Clear? So now, what is left out? Auxiliary verb is alone, left out. If you see in the sentence, it is singular, so they have used is. But in the answer, the subject is plural. So, what is the plural form of a be verb for present tense? Are. So you have to use this are. So she is eating fruits. Passive form is fruits are being. This is very important. Again and again I am telling you, are being eaten by her. Okay. Now the same sentence we will change it into negative form. See, after this it will be very easy. Only for simple present and simple past you will not have auxiliary verb in the active voice. So to change them into negative only you have to use do verb. But when it comes to the other tenses like continuous and perfect, you already have an auxiliary verb. So now how will you change this sentence into negative? She is eating fruits. Negative form is she is not eating fruits. Clear? So now for the positive we have already got the answer. Fruits are being eaten by her. So now after this are, that is auxiliary verb, you have to use this negative word not alone. Okay. Fruits are not being eaten by her. This is the negative form. Okay. Now this for the same sentence we are going to frame WH question. Okay, okay. She is eating fruits. So the only information for which we can form WH question is fruits. So we can write it as what is she eating? See first WH word what. Then auxiliary verb that is given is. Then subject is she. Then main verb eating. Now instead of the object only we have used the WH word what, and we know the object is fruits. What is she eating? She is eating fruits. Okay, or she is eating chocolates. Some answer. But whatever answer you get as an answer for this question what, it becomes the object of the sentence. So this is actually the object here, and this is auxiliary verb. This is subject and this is main verb. So you just as usual, you just interchange it. The subject you take it to the last. Okay, question mark. So object it is already, it's there in the front only. Okay, so now is eating is the verb here, and I told you it is present continuous tense. Now for is eating, we saw what is the passive form. Is eating, it becomes am being eaten, is being eaten, are being eaten. And just because in this sentence you have fruits as the subject, we have used are. But if you see this what, for what you cannot use are, you can only use is. So again in the answer also it is only. What is being? Okay, so is eating, it becomes is being eaten. So this WH word you bring it down as it is. So what is she eating? Active voice. It becomes what is being eaten by her. This she we have taken into the last and it has become her, and before her we have added this by, and this what we have retained it as it is because that is actually the object of the sentence, and this eating, it actually has become is being eaten. Now she is eating fruits. Now for the same sentence we have to frame yes or no question. So what is the first part of yes or no question? Auxiliary verb. This is the auxiliary verb here. Then what is the second part? We have subject. She is the subject there. She. Main verb is eating. And what is the object here? Fruits is the object. So in the place of object you write fruits. Usually in yes or no question you will have all the parts like subject, verb and object, because yes or no question it is just asked only for confirmation. Is it clear? Whereas WH question it is asked for some new information, so you will not have all the parts, you will not have both subject and verb. But whereas yes or no question you will have both subject and object. Sorry, not subject and verb, subject and object. Is it clear? So now if you see, this is auxiliary verb, this is subject, this is main verb and this is object. Okay, is she eating fruits? Okay, so this subject again you have to take it to the last, by her. Now this fruits, bring it to the front. Again, in the place of auxiliary verb you have to replace it with auxiliary verb. What are the three possible auxiliary verbs? Am, is, are. But for fruits it is plural, so you can use only are. Are fruits being eaten by her? So this is the passive form. Okay, so is she eating fruits has become are fruits being eaten by her. So now for present continuous also I have showed you how to change a positive sentence, negative sentence, WH question and SR question into its passive form. Next we will move on to present perfect tense. So now we will see present perfect tense. The enemy has defeated our army. Okay, so now how will you identify this as present perfect tense? As soon as you see this have verb there, you can immediately identify the tense as perfect tense, and has or have it is for present tense. So it is present perfect tense. Okay, so now as usual, pattern it. What is the action that is done? Defeating is the action. Who is defeating? The noun enemy is defeating. So enemy is doing the action, so that is the subject here. What is the action that is being done? Defeated is the action. And who is being defeated? On whom is action being done? Army, our army. So this is the object. We just interchange our army by the enemy. Is it clear? So now has defeated. See, for continuous tense I told you one important word you have to use is being. In the same way for perfect tense one important word you have to use is been. Okay, this being is for continuous tense, whether it is present continuous or past continuous you have to use this being in a passive form. Same way for perfect tenses, present perfect, future perfect, past perfect, you have to use being in passive form. Okay, so now first we have written this been. Now if you see in the question itself already this main verb is in past participle form. Okay, and the possible answer is has been defeated or have been defeated. Okay, this defeated is also the same only. Now has you have to use it for singular, have you have to use it for plural. Okay, but here the subject is singular. So again the same thing you have to use. Is it clear? Instead of this army, in case you had the enemy has defeated our soldiers. Now instead of this army you have soldiers. This is the object here. Now if you see the soldiers, it is plural. Our soldiers. So just because this is plural, you should not use has, you have to use have. Our soldiers have been defeated by the enemy. Okay, so if the subject is singular, you will use has. If the subject is plural, you will use have. So only has or have for present perfect tense. What is the third have verb we have? Third have verb is had, and had can be only used for past tense. Okay, so this is the answer for present perfect positive sentence. The enemy has defeated our army. Our army has been defeated by the enemy. The enemy has defeated our soldiers. Soldiers plural, our soldiers have been defeated. So this is the only difference, variation. So this is for positive. Now negative. Okay. So the same thing, how we can write it in the negative form? The enemy has not defeated. So after this has, we will use not. Okay. The enemy has not defeated our army. Is it clear? So now, what is the only extra word? Not is the only extra word. The rest of the sentence is same. So the same passive voice you can write. Our army has been defeated by the enemy. So just because it is a negative sentence, now after this auxiliary word, you add the negative word. The enemy has not defeated our army. Our army has not been defeated by the enemy. So this is how you have to change. Instead of this army, if you had soldiers also, our soldiers have not been defeated by the enemy. Okay, the answer is the same, children, but only difference is next to the auxiliary verb, you have to use this negative word not to show that it is negative sentence. Okay, now the next kind of sentence is WH question. How can you frame WH question for this? Two questions you can form. Who defeated our army? That is one question. Or whom has the enemy defeated? You can frame question with the subject, or you can frame question with the object. Okay. So the first question I will take it as who defeated our army? Is it clear? So now this who, it comes in the place of subject. This is verb and this is object. So just a few minutes before I told you, if you have an active sentence beginning with who, obviously the answer should begin with by whom. Oh sorry, this is perfect tense, no? Who has defeated our army? Okay, so by whom our army see? WH word by whom. Then you should have auxiliary verb has. By whom has okay, so first you have to begin with WH word, then you should have auxiliary verb, then you should have subject. Okay, this object, it comes to the subject position, our army, then the main verb. What is the main verb here? Defeated. And just because it is perfect tense, you have to add been. By whom has our army been defeated? So what is the question you had? Who has defeated our army? See, the enemy has defeated our army. So instead of this word enemy only, I have substituted it with who. Who has defeated our army? So this is the question, active voice. Now this you have to change it into passive form. This is the subject here, this is the verb, and this is the object. This object you are taking to the front, and this subject you are taking to the back. And whenever you have a question beginning with who, you should begin the passive voice with by whom. By whom? Then after the WH word, auxiliary verb. Has is the auxiliary verb. Is it clear? then subject. What is the subject here? Our army. Object comes to the subject position. Then main verb. Main verb is defeated. Just because it is perfect tense, we have added been here. By whom has our army been defeated? So this is WH question. Now the same sentence you have to change it into yes or no question. Yes or no question, it is very easy. Just you bring this auxiliary verb to the front, it becomes yes or no question. Has the enemy defeated our army? Okay, so now the sentence form we had, the enemy has defeated our army. Now yes or no question, only this auxiliary verb is brought to the front. So the same answer you can write, our enemy has been defeated by the army. So the same way I'll write, our enemy been defeated, because it should begin with auxiliary verb. Is it clear? Sorry, has our army. Has our army been defeated by the enemy? Okay, see, the enemy has defeated our army is a sentence. Passive voices, our enemy has been defeated by the army. Yes or no question, how have I written? I have just brought this has to the front. Has the enemy defeated our army? So obviously in the answer also, this has, you bring it to the front. Has our army been defeated by the enemy? And finally, please add this question mark. See, if you see, it is beginning with auxiliary verb, then you have the subject, then you have the main verb, then you have the object, and before the object you have added the preposition by. So for present perfect tense also, I have taught you how to change positive sentence, negative sentence and WH question, yes or no question into their passive forms. Okay, the rest of the things I will teach you in the next class. Thank you.